because it doesn't always inform you, I do actually kind of forget. Like, you know, if there's anybody that subscribed to me like earlier on and then just kept the subscription going, I guess I wouldn't know if they were still subscribed. I don't actually, that and like between people pointing out on stream when they do it and whenever I get, you know, one of the $50 payouts or whatever, that's like the only time I really think about where my subscriptions are at. And even then, I always just try to put that back into stream somehow, generally. But yeah, I'll usually try and use the money towards something like, I want to say one of the first times it was emotes. Another time I bought like a game that was on my radar that seemed really fitting for me to play on stream. My last one was actually my alt PNG tuber, which I didn't necessarily plan to. It was just kind of like a perfect moment of like a bigger artist that I've followed for a long time happened to open their commissions, and it was also a stream related thing, and I was like, fuck it. Sounds like kind of a cute thing to just have on hand. And I think I was right, because everyone seems to really like it. So, it seems like it was worth it. Both PNGs are lovely. Yeah. Let me actually, so that I just did the first one a second ago, but I'll do it again. This is the one who did my main PNG tuber and a bunch of other stuff. And then I think I spelled that right. Yep, that's the artist who did this one. Who is actually like a decently well-known YouTuber. Like, certainly not a small amount of subscribers, does a lot of cute animations that make the rounds, so would not be totally surprised if you had heard of them before. Jacket, yeah! That was kind of a fun moment. Just as far as, like, out of all the commissions I've gotten, I usually don't commission bigger artists. And, I mean, obviously part of that is financial, because it's a heck of a lot cheaper to find a smaller artist. But also part of that is, like, actually finding an opportune time where I'm like, I have the money, I love this artist style, makes a lot of sense for me to get something from them. So when I, you know, kind of put two and two together on, wait a second, I just got my Twitch payout. They just opened their commissions. Price aside, I also just kind of like commissioning smaller artists. The energy of it's just always really nice, where it's just very like, they're absurdly excited that anybody is messaging them for a commission, because sometimes it can just be really hard, especially when you're a very small artist on a big platform, to get people to really reach out to you. Reach out to you at all. And I don't know. There's just a lot more of like a back and forth with the artists themselves. Haven't been able to commission anyone yet, but I think I'd get a lot more out of commissioning a small artist that I'm at least a little familiar with. Yeah, exactly. I think for me, so I think I've gone either two routes with it. It's either been people that, at least when I use Twitter, now I'm not exactly using Twitter, but people that I'd randomly stumble across on Twitter that, like, I don't know, sometimes you just get random art in your feed. Oh, cutscene? Yeah, a lot of the times it would just be, like, random things I'd stumble across on Twitter that just, like, happen to hit my feed, and I'm like, I think your style's really cute. Holy shit, you are a very small artist. Are your commissions open? They sure are, and you're not charging a heck of a lot, which also usually means I try to tip them as well as I can. On the flip side of though, I do also just really like commissioning friends. Like Crazy Fox Lady, the first one that I shared there, is somebody that I actually met like a year, or honestly, I think we're getting on like 10 years since I originally met her, and she, like, I reached out to her for a commission of like my old Sona a million years ago. I think just because it was so hard to find artists, like, because my old Sona was like just kind of me with fox ears and a tail, like not even a fursona, so to speak. And it was really hard to find artists that did humans well and not in an anime style, but still in a cute cartoony style. And I had found her work through just like randomly searching around, and in the past like 3 or 4 years, she's really started to blow up, and I'm like, hell yeah. You like super deserve it. You've been a great artist this entire time, but now you're just really starting to put yourself out there, and it's like immediately paying off. But yeah, I don't know. Oh, the commissioning friends is fun. That's why it's always funny to me. Like, obviously it's always bots, but like anytime a bot comes in and they're like, I could make some outfits for your PNG tuber, I'm like, one, I wouldn't take an unsolicited thing anyway. Two, I'm just gonna reach out to my friends again. I like getting commissions from the friend that's loved helping me with this stuff the entire time, and I'm gonna keep doing that. Oh yeah, I will say, as far as like, you know, seeking out smaller artists, I have been screwed over by it once before, as far as like, you know, they're a small artist, so you don't exactly know what their, you know, how well their sales have gone in the past, if they even have much of a sales history. It definitely wasn't a bot or anything, I know that much. Like, it was somebody who was posting a bunch of art that definitely seemed legit, and I liked them, and I think I even had them followed for a little bit. And I can only assume something actually did happen in their life, because pretty shortly... Oh. Pretty shortly after that, like, I had given them, like, the initial money for the commission, and then they just kind of stopped posting altogether. But... I don't know. It was, like, $15 or something. So I wasn't sweating it too much. It was mostly just kind of a weird experience. Where I'm like, yeah, I guess that can happen when it's hard to know who somebody even is. I think it's very worth it for the flip side of things, where normally you message a small artist and it's like, it just totally makes their day, and it's super, super wholesome. Wow, I like kinda did something there. That was fun. I got to be an annoying forest critter. Yeah. One thing that's actually, like, I was talking about this, like, when I first started streaming before people really showed up, but one thing that's kind of funny about the way that I set up the custom color for her is that she's one of those squirrel characters, which I feel like is mostly a thing in Japanese or maybe even just Asian media in general, where they'll say a character or like an animal is a squirrel, but then they'll have like the chipmunk stripes on the tail, as you can kind of see in like the portrait here and in like this here. So like normally, no matter what, you see Makoto with those stripes on the tail. So it was kind of fun setting up a custom color where she's got like the solid color tail. But also, I don't know why that's a thing. I've tried looking into it before, like why like the chipmunk pattern is so common on Japanese squirrels in media. I don't know if it's like a specific breed of squirrel that they're pulling that from that's more common in like Asian territories or something. Like, it's a little weird. When I think squirrel, I think gray like Rocky and Bullwinkle. Oh, that's fair. I mean, squirrels are kind of funny where they're like different all over the world, like pretty dramatically. Like, I feel like something that's like practically a joke in like the squirrel space, I suppose, in furry culture, is that like you can usually at the very least tell if somebody is from the EU just by what squirrel they are, because most people who are in the EU aren't attached to like gray squirrels like an American would be. They're attached to red squirrels that have the totally different ears. Also, I fucking love this victory animation that she has, where she's just like wiggling her huge ass tail back and forth. That probably did something to my psyche. Asuma's cool. I feel like he's another character where I'm like, I like the idea of learning you, but you are learning like a totally different game. In a way that's cool. Like, I think he's insanely interesting. I don't know if I actually have any pictures of it on my computer, but since at this point I've done a face reveal and I don't really care. One of the only cosplays I've ever done was a Hazuma cosplay. And that is mostly because it was a very easy cosplay to put together. I mean, just look at it, I guess. he's a guy in a suit, and I bought a green wig online, and that was like basically it. I did have a little help. I happened to have a friend at the time that was like going to school for tailoring and stuff, and they were able to help with like getting like the stupid belt things on the jacket and stuff. Because for some reason he just has 2 loose belt buckles hanging from his chest. I still have a lot of stuff from that cosplay sitting around, but I definitely can't fit in it anymore. But yeah, that was a mix of wanting to do something BlazBlue and also needing a budget option, because I didn't want to spend $1 million on cosplay. I do have a very core memory of one of, like, because I want to say I wore it to, like, maybe 2 cons over the years. And, one of the ones that I, like, or maybe it was just one, I forget. Anyway, I remember at one of the cons there was a Ragna cosplayer there. And it was just, like, a really adorable, silly cosplay moment of them seeing me from, like, across the room. And then just doing, like, a really accurate Ragna, like, terror me, like... Alright, so this is, like, basically the only decent photo I have of it, with this being, like, the zoom-in of it. It is very blurry, but it gets the job done. And then this is the same picture, but just with the Ragna cosplayer that I bumped into. Of course, you can't see, like, the tag or anything. And then, picture that wasn't there before, this is the Christina V, the voice actor for Noelle. And actually, I now remember how old this was, because that was long enough ago that I remember when I went to that, like, meet and greet for her, I asked her, I was like, do you know if you're going to be the English voice in BlazBlue Alter Memory, because that hadn't came out yet. I'll switch back to Makoto. And I remember at the time she, like, wasn't even aware of it. Which obviously, I'm sure, anyway, I guess I didn't watch it in English, but I'm sure that she came back for the English dub of that. Eventually, whenever that came around. Actually, that just reminded me, I don't know where I still have it, but somewhere I have a copy of Chrono Phantasma that I think is signed by at least Christina V and, wasn't it Patrick Seitz, the, Ragna's English voice actor? And his signature was adorable, because he just wrote Carnage Scissors on the package with his name, like, next to his signature. And then drew, like, a really shitty pair of, scissors. Doing fine, I just won a Virtual Fighter round robin yesterday. Nice. I've been kind of curious to try Virtual Fighter, since it's one of those games, which I'm sure it's this way for a lot of people, where had it for the 360 because I only had so many games to the 360. And remember it being a very, very cool fighting game at the time, but it was also before I knew anything about competitive fighting games in general. So I didn't know what I was actually doing, but I do have nostalgia for, like, the vibe of the game. Had 4 Evolutions growing up on the PS2, and since 5 got a PC port, I picked that up ASAP. Yeah, the game like that for me would probably be like the Dead or Alive games, which is why I was, like, completely caught off guard when I saw people playing it at the game room at A&E, where Dead or Alive 4 was probably the first fighting game I spent, like, a substantial amount of time with. Not on a competitive level, but just, like, you know, spending summer afternoons over a friend's house while we beat arcade mode over and over kind of thing. DOA was one of the first 3D fighting games I played, only because of Ninja Gaiden. That is fair. I want to say I just played both games around the same time, so it was a very weird time where a bunch of Xbox 360 games were very connected to each other, where it was like Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive, which were both series that I was very attached to and got to, like, you know, see them side by side in that way. And then immediately after that, for me anyway, was well, I wasn't super deep with the Halo games. There was a connection there where, like, a bunch of my friends played Halo and I played a bit of Halo. Which, for those who don't know, the Hayabusa armor that is in Halo 3 is because of a crossover with Dead or Alive 4, where there is a Spartan character that you can play as in that game, which is very, very funny. One thing I remember about Dead or Alive, and I don't know if it ever ended up holding up through 5 or 6, because I, like, basically didn't follow up with it, was, I remember actually thinking the story was kind of fun. And, like, kind of intense at times. I'm sure it was never really the deepest thing in the world. But I don't know if it kept up with that momentum. Like, even, like, the final cutscene in 4 is something that's, like, weirdly memorable to me. And it's funny. So, for context, the final cutscene in 4 is this, like, really dramatic scene of, like, basically the entirety of this giant tech company, like, burning to the ground because the owner, like, opted to hit the self-destruct button on it. But also, like, it was a very emotional decision with the intent of, like, her going down with it. And it's this absolutely beautiful cutscene of, like, showing, like, a flashback of her life while she's walking through the building, burning down to the ground. All while... what the fuck's the song? Amazing. Amazing by Aerosmith. And it was kind of funny because for a while I worked retail at Staples, and for some reason that song was part of the, like, rotation of songs that were on pretty regularly. So I was very frequently reminded about the ending of Dead or Alive 4 while working my shift at Staples, thinking about a woman in her final hours trying to go down with her ship. And I'm like, would you like ink with that new printer? Yeah, I'm dead. That's fair. I feel like I keep saying that's fair, and I hope it never accidentally gets interpreted as me, like, saying it like, oh yeah, that's totally fair. It's like actually me being like, oh yeah, that was a fair call out. I fucked up. I think you're generally one of the calmest PP players I have ever seen. I try. I don't know. It's not like I never get frustrated at fighting games or whatever. It's hard not to sometimes when you're on a losing streak and you're trying to do your best or whatever, but in general, I just, generally speaking, don't mind losing. I have fun with the learning experience of it all. I very rarely get too frustrated at basically any matchup, unless it's something that just feels like a total blowout in a way that's, like, kind of ridiculous to be on the receiving end of. But, like, if it's just like a character's got their own weird mechanic that's tough to get through in its own way, I usually just kind of find that fun for its own reasons. Like, I guess the default example being things like zoners and grapplers and stuff. I don't know. Also, I'm just not an over-the-top person. Like, in general. Like, I like chatting about silly stuff, which is, like, a lot of the reason I like streaming. I like bouncing off of people or just telling random stories or whatever. But not much of a memer. And I'm not much of a particularly hyper person, so it all kind of plays into itself. And I think that's a good thing with fighting games. A genre that is very understandably one that can get you pretty upset. Especially because a lot of stuff with fighting games is not very clear until you get deep with them. Like, as a casual player being in situations where you're like, that totally should have hit, and, like, on paper it visually looks like you're probably right about that. But it's because of some stupid, weird mechanic that doesn't make any sense unless you get super deep with the game. Like, I had no idea until I started playing BlazBlue competitively that the anti-airs worked the way that they did. Where they were just completely, like, head invuln, is how it's called. Like, as far as, like, aerial attacks straight up cannot hit some moves. And, like, I would have never, entire time playing this game for, like, close to, like, 7 or 8, maybe even, yeah, like 7 or 8 years leading up to the point where I started playing more competitively. I just didn't know that was a mechanic. So, and my casual brain just had to live with being like, oh, that should have hit. The only time I remember getting, like, extremely frustrated in a tournament setting even was... Oh, I guess I have to give some, like, full context because we're talking about a totally different game. But for a while, I played Smash 4 competitively, which is a meme in and of itself, but it was the first game that I really got into competitively. And I played Pac-Man in that game. And in Smash Ultimate, Pac-Man is an amazing character. They really rounded out his kit nicely. He's super fun to play as. And like all of his concepts really came together in a way that they did not in Smash 4. In Smash 4, some of his moves straight up didn't work properly. And it was very easy to wall out his projectiles. But then Cloud came out, and Cloud has Big Sword. And again, for people who played Ultimate, it was even bigger in Smash 4. And the way that swords work in oh, that was cool. The way that swords work in Smash, as opposed to most fighting games, is they are all completely disjointed. They are not part of your hurt box at all. So, characters that had weapons in Smash have always had a really big advantage in that sense. And it's just kind of like part of how the character's built, which I think is cool. It's actually something that took a while for me to get used to when I started playing traditional fighters. Oh! That was weird, but I'll take it. And, because it's a disjointed move, he could literally just rip through every single thing Pac-Man did. All of his projectiles, if he did a neutral air, it wouldn't clash with it. It would just delete the projectile from existence. It wouldn't do anything against him whatsoever. And then Pac-Man's grab was very broken in that game, so I also couldn't run up and grab him. And also, Pac-Man throws a hydrant downwards, and he throws his sword like up in the air, which would, like the projectiles, just completely nullify it as if it didn't even exist. And I was like mid-tournament, or like after the match, I was like, literally nothing I did worked. Not a single move I did worked. At all. This was awful. I'm the same way. I don't really get frustrated too much when I'm losing, especially if I'm new to a game. Yeah, exactly. The only way I'll get a little upset is my opponent is exhibiting BM like teabag. Yeah, and that's fair. I think for me, I mostly just hate when people are rude. Like, if people are like... Which, I mean, I don't know. That feels such like a generic thing to say. Of course, that applies to, like, everything. But, like, I don't know. People, like, get, like, really, like, stupid and angry with, like, again, like, something like zoning or something. Where it's like, if you wanted to play a zoner character, people will just, like, sometimes get mad at you for existing, I guess. And that is super lame to me. It is very lame to get mad at something like that. And again, I guess that's just coming from the perspective of somebody that finds matchups, no matter how weird they are, generally fun to learn. So I'm like, come on. Like, one, just figure it out, I guess. I don't know. And two, they're not like a fucking worse person than you. Calm down. Average BB player ranges from I hate this game to yo, my character is broken to everyone else's character is broken to existential crisis. I will say, I mean, as far as like, as much as I've streamed this game, I am yet to have a negative experience with anybody that I've played with on here. And I mean, I don't know, maybe they're holding back and they're just not saying what they're feeling in chat or whatever, but for the most part, everybody's been very pleasant when they've come in to actually chat, which I'm grateful for. I'm only BMing games like Clash Royale or League of Legends. A lot of the reason I honestly don't like playing, well, I guess I don't know Clash Royale, but League of Legends and games, I guess mostly team games in general, that you need to have a very functional and nice team that likes playing off of each other for those games not to get very toxic very fast. And that basically goes for anything. It could be shooters, could be, you know, MOBAs, whatever, any team-based game. It's so easy to blame teammates and not reflect on your own play, or maybe they're just even hard games to even know how to reflect on your own play, which is just a lot of the reason that fighting games appealed to me so much. I like Pac-Man Smash? Yeah, or Smash Ultimate. Pac-Man is, I still play as him in Smash Ultimate. I felt like I got rewarded, because he went from being a character that barely functioned to being like one of the coolest characters ever. As little as I play Smash Ultimate nowadays, Pac-Man is still... Oh yeah, hey, we're listening to Pac-Man music. That wasn't on purpose. Pac-Man is still like one of my favorite characters in any fighting game ever.